The government recognizes the First Amendment right of Native Americans to ingest peyote as part of the free exercise of their religion, but under no circumstances do the rest of us enjoy that right, even if we use peyote in a similar way. So here is a case where it is the identity of the user rather than the drug that changes its legal status. Nothing about drugs is straightforward. But it's not quite true that our plant taboos are entirely arbitrary. As these examples suggest, societies condone the mind-changing drugs that help uphold society's rule and ban the ones that are seen to undermine it. That's why in a society's choice of psychoactive substances, we can read a great deal about both its fears and its desires. Ever since I took up gardening as a teenager and attempted to grow cannabis, I have been fascinated by our attraction to these powerful plants, as well as by the equally powerful taboos and fraught feelings with which we surround them. I've come to appreciate that when we take these plants into our bodies and let them change our minds, we are engaging with nature in one of the most profound ways possible. There is scarcely a culture on Earth that hasn't discovered in its environment at least one such plant or fungus, and in most cases a whole suite of them, that alters consciousness in one of a variety of ways. Through what was surely a long and perilous trial and error, humans have identified plants that lift the burden of physical pain, render us more alert or capable of uncommon feats, make us more sociable, elicit feelings of awe or ecstasy, nourish our imagination, transcend space and time, occasion dreams and visions and mystical experiences, and bring us into the presence of our ancestors or gods. Evidently, normal, everyday consciousness is not enough for us humans. We seek to vary, intensify, and sometimes transcend it, and we have identified a whole collection of molecules in nature that allow us to do that. This Is Your Mind on Plants is a personal inquiry into three of those molecules and the remarkable plants that produce them: the morphine in the opium poppy, the caffeine in coffee and tea, and the mescaline produced by the peyote and San Pedro cactus. The second of these molecules is legal everywhere today. The first is illegal in most places, unless it has been refined by a pharmaceutical company and prescribed by a physician. And the third is illegal in the United States unless you are a member of a Native American tribe. Each represents one of the three broad categories of psychoactive compounds: the downer, opium, the upper, caffeine, and what I think of as the outer, mescaline. Or, to put it a bit more scientifically, I profile here a sedative, a stimulant, and a hallucinogen. Taken together, these three plant drugs cover much of the spectrum of the human experience of psychoactive substances, from the everyday use of caffeine, the most popular psychoactive drug on the planet, to the ceremonial use of mescaline by indigenous peoples, to the age-old use of opiates to relieve pain. That particular chapter is set during the drug war, at a topsy-turvy moment when the government was paying more attention to a bunch of gardeners growing poppies in order to brew a mild narcotic tea than it did to a pharmaceutical company that was knowingly addicting millions of Americans to its FDA-approved opiate, OxyContin. I was one of those gardeners. I tell each of these stories from multiple perspectives and through a variety of lenses: historical, anthropological, biochemical, botanical, and personal. In each case, I have some skin in the game, or perhaps I should say brain cells, since I don't know how to write about how it feels and what it means to change consciousness without conducting some self-experimentation. Though in the case of caffeine, self-experimentation meant abstaining from it rather than partaking, which proved much harder to do. One of these chapters consists of an essay I wrote 25 years ago when the drug war was raging, and it bears the scars of that period of fear and paranoia. But the other stories have been inflected by the fading of that war, the end of which now appears in sight. In the 2020 election, Oregonians voted to decriminalize the possession of all drugs, and specifically to legalize therapy using psilocybin. A ballot measure passed in Washington, D.C. calls for the decriminalization of, quote, entheogenic plants and fungi, end quote. Entheogen is from the Greek for